Alright, the ScourgeBringer update actually came out early on Game Pass. I legit forgot that I was subscribed to Game Pass. I don't use it that much, but kinda came in handy today. So I'm not an expert on this game. I did play it back when they gave me the key, but I kind of stopped because it's a really great game, but it was a really bad roguelike. A lot of these games, these roguelikes that have an emphasis on, skill-based combat and stuff instead of just pure RNG, a lot of times the downside to that kind of design is that it's harder to make the runs feel unique when a lot of what the player is capable of is their own skill instead of just, grinding or getting a lucky item or something. But if you're going to make a roguelike, you need to have some kind of some kind of items or synergies or something to make it feel like you're not just playing like an arcade game with randomized rooms and stuff. It needs to actually feel like a roguelike, and they've actually made some pretty major changes. One of the things they changed is that the entire upgrade tree is unlocked from the start. Before, every boss that you beat would unlock a different branch, so that was their way of kind of reinforcing you just getting better at the game naturally instead of grinding, but the game is really hard for a lot of people, and I guess they want to make it more accessible, so I actually think it's a welcome change. Kinda was frustrating having tons of upgrade points that you could use and then not having anything you could actually use them on because you couldn't get past whatever that boss you were stuck on was. I think this is a better way of doing things overall. Alright, so let's do a couple runs here. I've definitely played my fair share of action roguelikes they're fun games in their own right, but you don't have that crazy synergy and stuff going on that, like, an Isaac game would or something like that. Okay, so this is one of the new things they added. They added the ability to pay for, I guess, massive upgrades with items, with your health, actually. So let's grab the HP. I don't really think you can clear this game on the first run. It would probably be really boring and slow-paced. But part of the problem before was that you would get... I don't know how to word this, but a lot of the good stuff was not available until later. It felt greatly limited. Probably just put invulnerability on. You have accessibility options in this. You can either give yourself more health drops or just straight up make yourself invincible, which I think is cool. They do have more narrative stuff in this game now, and it's a pretty difficult game by nature, so I think it's cool that they have that. I should just check out the new stuff since I'm going to have to do this again on my Switch file and my PC file. For the sake of making the video not boring, we're just gonna play. Need a bunch of upgrades for that. They seem to have massively improved everything in like one patch, because that was the biggest complaint for this game, is that it's very, very fun, responsive, and kind of unique game in terms of the way it plays, but it was not a good roguelike. It's a hard thing to balance, though, to be fair. You know, if you actually make your roguelike skill-based, then it's kind of hard to balance things where you can have, like, crazy Isaac synergies and stuff, but that's the kind of thing that makes roguelikes interesting, is having cool synergies and stuff that you get, like, maybe one every dozen runs or so. When you don't have that, it kind of feels like a straight action game. But in my opinion, from somebody who's played a lot of action roguelikes, I think that's just kind of a downside of making an action roguelike in the first place. It's really hard to balance it being skill-based and just being completely dependent on... you know, how much broken stuff you get. Let's check the shop really quick, see if there's anything there I wanted. Yeah, before the items in this were really boring. They weren't particularly interesting. Now there's actually some cool stuff going on. Let's go ahead and take this. I don't care if this run dies. I'm gonna do a couple runs today. I don't really care about progression anyway, because I bought this on Switch. I'm waiting for that to come out. Which might actually be in an hour at the time of recording. Alright, I'm gonna grab that sword damage. Oops. I think the problem with the progression before was not that it encouraged you to get better at the game instead of grinding, it's just that you would have so many upgrade points that you couldn't use because you couldn't get to the next tier of the tree. I think this is the lesser of two evils, if you ask me. It's never fun when you're playing a roguelike and you feel like you're making no progress whatsoever. And that's kind of how it was before. Even with all the upgrades, you still have to, like, actually know how to play this game. You can't just button mash through it. The upgrades are more of, like, new options and new ways to deal with situations you get put in, instead of just making me busted. what this has got. Oh, good. That's about as good as it gets. I actually don't want any of this stuff. I think I can go without that. Let's get that upgrade for the sword. Imagine it, the mini-boss must be down here. Or not. Oh. Huh. Let's begin out fast. Leave the heal there. Boss has to be over here at this point. Yeah, I was right. Messed up. Get the stun there. I'll be the first to say I'm not that great at this game. I mean, I've put a couple hours into it, but I kind of got bored because the roguelike elements were very weak. But now they're in a much better spot. The difficulty curve feels a lot smoother, too. Like, I got to the second boss on my first run. I'm sure you could beat this on the first run, but you kind of like Hades. Yeah, Hades actually has, like, specific dialogue for beating Hades on the first run. But you don't have an invincible dash in this, so that just makes it more difficult by proxy. They did add some lower rooms. I don't really play games like this with a story, but it's nice. I think it's nice to have that kind of thing in a roguelike regardless, just because in this game you don't get a ton of progress each time you finish a run. Getting a little tidbits of story, I think, kind of helps. People that are into that kind of thing, I'm definitely not. those things attacks. Yeah, I knew that was gonna happen. But now I'll have the Fury unlocked so I can burst those guys down. Dragon Punch is really good. I think that actually does give you invincibility. A lot of people, myself included, don't like how the dash has no invincibility. Well, I think that's a cool way of fixing it. Back when the game first came out, you actually could dash and smash attack at the same time. They just kind of made it into an official feature. It's one of those things that was a bug, but I guess became a feature. So that's a pretty significant damage boost right there. So they added monster types or classifications to all of them. Some of them are immune to bullets, some of them aren't. So I don't really feel like this game needed. I think it could have gone without that. You already have to manage so much in this game, especially since you have no invincible dash or dodge whatsoever. Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit split on that. It's really hard to remember, especially when you're in the middle of playing. I don't really feel like it was necessary. I don't know, elemental weaknesses and stuff in video games have never really been that interesting to me. They always kind of just feel tacked on, at least in my opinion. Like, they're just kind of there to make things more needlessly complicated, and they very rarely work in the player's favor. It's mostly kind of like how it works in this game, where it's just something that makes things more complicated in a game where you already have a lot to focus on. You have no get-out-of-jail-free card in this. Besides your Fury, which is basically like a super. You don't get that many of those, so... We'll have to see what other people think about it. I'm not particularly a fan of it. I liked it the way it was before, personally. But everything else they've done, at least to me, somebody who beat the game, but beat the game in early access before they added all the stuff, it does feel better. I think this would be a really cool game with mods. I know it's not on Unity. I think this was made with Mono Game, so that's probably going to make it harder for a modding community to get out there, but I know Hades has a bunch of mods already, so who knows. I really wish Wizard of Legend had more of a modding community. There's like one guy doing it, and he lost interest for whatever reasons he has. You know, it's totally fine. I'm not going to pretend like I don't lose interest in games that people want me to play all the time. I get it, but generally in a roguelike, there's at least a couple people doing mods. You could definitely do some cool stuff with this game with mods, just by tweaking a couple minor things. not being able to use guns on these guys feels stupid. You need to be up close to them, and you can't anymore. Like, I don't get the purpose of it. The execution of it is not great, especially since there's no visual feedback on what is weak to what. Like, you already have so much information to process in this game, and you have very few ways to be invincible. Pretty much only one way to be invincible. It's basically the equivalent of like a level 3 super in a fighting game. I don't really think needing elemental stuff was necessary in the slightest. I kind of had that problem with Trials of Mana. That's one of the reasons why I dropped that game. A lot of the passives and stuff were all related to elemental effects, and like I don't think any of that stuff worked on bosses, so it just felt pointless to me. There's definitely an easy way to increase mechanical depth to your game, but I personally have never been a fan of it. But to each their own. I'm sure some people are really gonna like it. I just, in particular, it's not something I'm into. I think Neo is a pretty good example. Like, speccing elemental stuff in that is cool on paper, but you get kind of helpless when you fight any boss that's not weak to it. And also, there's diminishing returns on how many times you can proc an element in that game. So it's like, it'll work in like the first couple seconds of the fight, and then it just stops working completely. So it's like you have all this stuff for elemental damage, and it's really not that interesting. Everything either dies too quickly, or they don't die fast enough for it to really make much of a discernible difference. Alright, let's save that. Oh, cool, got the boss. Alright, let's go back and grab that item. to actually have a pretty bad build. Build actually seems to matter now in a way. I don't know how to dodge that attack. There we go. Almost. Alright, well, that's gonna do it for now. This is the Game Pass version, which got the update early. Obviously, I'm gonna be playing on PC and Switch more, so, yeah, just thought I'd show it off. I actually think most of the changes they made are actually quite good. Being able to access the whole skill tree right away will allow people to get more powerful while still learning how to play the game, because you have to realize the only thing that gives you upgrade points is the bosses. So, the mid-boss and the main boss of each level. So if you're not even getting to any of those two bosses, then you're not going to be gaining any progress at all. I feel like you do still need to learn how to actually play the game and not mash. I think mashing in this game won't take you far. I think that's what reinforces their ability to open up the entire skill tree, unlike the way it was before. You had to beat the bosses. As you can see, if you don't know how to dodge the attacks, you will die pretty much every time. The upgrades are really not going to save you. They're more of more options. Some of them obviously do make you objectively more powerful, but in the end, a lot of it is going to be player skill. And I think one of the things that was frustrating about playing this game before is, whatever your roadblock was, whether it was the enemies or the bosses or both, you would just have a ton of skill points or upgrade points, and you couldn't use them. And then what would happen when you did beat that boss is you would just get everything anyway. Okay, it kind of felt a little bit disjointed. It's like you would unlock the new branch and then you would instantly get everything because you had so many points that you couldn't spend on anything. I know that there's supposed to be some way to spend the upgrade points after you finish, but I'm not exactly sure how that works yet. Overall, I think this update is the full release update is actually a pretty massive step in the right direction. The only thing I don't like is the elemental stuff. I think it's dumb how they can just deflect the gun completely. I think that's kind of stupid. It would have been better of an implementation if it just reduced their damage or something. So, say you had a really powerful gun and you kept getting a lot of the bots that deflect it, you could at least still use it. But here, it just bounces off. That's definitely one of the implementations of an element system that I dislike the most. That was a problem in the original version of the DMC reboot. You may remember that. They had the color-coded enemies, and you couldn't hit them with anything but that respective weapon, which took off, 2/3 of your options, which wasn't very fun. That's kind of how it feels here so far, but it seems to be mostly limited to the bots, but that's still a pretty significant chunk of the enemies in the game, so I don't know how to feel about that. I'm sure they're going to get a lot of feedback about that. Maybe they'll find a better balance for it. But I will do the Switch version tomorrow, whenever it releases. I did play the demo, and the demo runs surprisingly well. I don't think this game has as much going on as some of the other roguelikes on Switch, which kind of struggle to run it, like Hades and stuff. Obviously, it is a pixel art game, so that does help too, but we've all seen a lot of games on Switch that should run fine but don't because they don't know the hardware, or they don't get a good porting studio, or there's not much time put into optimization, or a combination of those things. But from what I saw, the port was quite good. I was surprised at how good it was. I got a key for this back when it first entered early access, and I figured I liked the game enough. I liked the changes that they've been advertising in the full release, and now that I get to play it myself, they actually weren't lying. The gameplay is quite good now. I think the overall just package of the game is much better than it was before, so I'll get that port review out as soon as I can, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.